Welcome to Australia.
You'd be a lot more comfortable if you changed into something a little less constricting.
You keep your eyes on the road.
Mr. Drover, there's only one tent.
We're not really used to
A woman?
Guests. We're not used to guests, that's what I was about to say.
How did you become involved in this project? Because I read that Nicole Kidman had something to do with it.
She probably did, on some level. But the first exposure I had to it was a phone call from Baz 3 years ago. Yeah, just over 3 years ago now. He rang me, and it was a great conversation because he's told me about his ambitions of doing this film, which they just don't make anymore. I said, really? Tell me again. He said, well, I want to have a film that is like an old school Hollywood epic. I want to have high comedy, tragedy, romance, action, adventure, all rolled into one. And at the center of it, this story about the stolen generation, about the Aboriginal people. And I was like, man, this is ambitious. He didn't have a title for it at the time. He didn't even know what role I was going to play. And I kind of signed on it. But when I did meet up with Nicole, I said, she said, oh, you're talking to Baz? You got to do it, you got to do it. And I said, well, I'm excited. I really want to read the script. She says, don't worry about the script. I haven't read the script. Just sign on. And that's sort of what I did.
You said it's an epic. How is it different from what you've worked on before?
Well, movies increasingly are, I think, more specialised. So you'll have an action movie which appeals to a wider range but is really aimed at a certain 17-year-old boys, right? Young men. You'll have movies like a romance, or you'll have a thriller, you'll have a kids movie, you'll have Sex and the City for 40-year-old women. Movies are becoming more and more specialised. Movies didn't used to be like that. Movies used to be somewhere where everyone could go and partake and enjoy. And I think that's what Baz has tried to recreate here, and has tried to make this movie that is cool for grandma, the kids, the groovy young couple, the intelligentsia, for everyone to go and see. And I really admire him for that.
They keep out of my way, and I keep out of theirs. That's the way it is.
Just because it is doesn't mean it should be.
There are a few horses in this film.
Yeah.
Just a few.
A lot of horses.
Did you get saddle sore?
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to get into too many details, but let me tell you, the Australian stock saddle is kind of the equivalent of doing a rodeo on a bicycle seat. Yeah, it's not easy, and you do get very sore. Yes, I got saddle sores, particularly at the beginning. I went out on one drove where we went out for days, on a real drove. And up to that point, I've been riding every day. I would do up to 2 hours in the morning, right? Riding different things, different skills. But when you ride all day, for a few days, it's a soreness not
It's painful.
previously found in nature, yes.
You grew up in Sydney. Did you have much experience of the Australian outback and of Aborigine culture?
I always loved the idea of living in the outback, of living in the middle of nowhere, that fantasy life of being part of, being free, really. That's what it is. I did spend some time, 3 months when I was 19, out in this part of the world. I've started working on Aboriginal mission, which is what they were called back then, and building a house, 2 houses we built, with a group of friends. And then I stayed on and ran the general store on my own. I was the only white guy on the mission. That's when I started to begin to understand the Aboriginal culture, their philosophies, and made friends. Because when I went to school, first of all, I never heard about the stolen generation at school, wasn't discussed. And secondly, there was not one Aboriginal kid where I went to school. So anything I knew was on a very superficial level.
I read that you lived on location. How was that?
Fantastic. We shot in a property called Carlton Hill, which is on traditional Aboriginal land, and it is the size of Belgium. It is massive, and it is an hour and a half to get back to town. The first 45 minutes of that drive was on the same property, on the property we were on, right? So they drove me out to set. We worked that day, and I had a caravan there on set, you know, to relax in at lunch and stuff like that. And I said, well, they said, well, we're going to drive you back. I said, we're going back for an hour and a half in the dark, and then come back at 4:30 in the morning. I said, let's just stay here. So I stayed there. We lit a fire outside, and me and my son lived out there for 6 weeks. It was heaven. It was a crocodile-infested river below us, and we'd spot them at night and look in and see 100 crocodiles down there. It was unbelievable. It was great.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, we survived. It didn't matter.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you for talking to me.
My pleasure.
Whatever it takes.
That's be strong. Can you do that?